Trump loves to talk about fake news. Anytime anyone in the media writes something that appears to be critical, Trump just brushes it off as false reporting and fake. However, it turns out that him repeatedly saying that is kind of working. And some Americans do believe that the media is fabricating stories about Trump and his administration. So Politico and Morning Consult did a poll on this, and here's what they found. If you look at all voters, and you take a representative sample and look at all voters, it turns out that 46% of voters say yes, the media is making up stories about Trump. 37% say no, and 17% are undecided.
Look, this is really important. They're not saying that the media is biased and slanting the stories or giving their opinion on the stories. They're saying that the news media is fabricating the stories. Fabricating, just making it up out of whole cloth. So, in fact, Donald Trump did have a record-breaking size at his inauguration, but the news media got together and decided to fabricate that the crowds were not that big, and they fabricated the pictures. I mean, I'm just giving you one example.
Are we fabricating his tweets too? Are we fabricating things that he says on television himself? I mean, anyway, okay. It's just absurd because even if we did absolutely no reporting whatsoever, he says things himself. He tweets, he can't stop himself from tweeting. He attacks people, he gets involved in these ridiculous like non-issues and these fights. Anyway, all right, let's focus on Republicans, Democrats, independents, yada, yada. What do they think? Like when you divvy it up, when you divvy up the voters and look at their ideological background, what do they think in regard to news coverage on Trump? When it comes to Republicans, of course, the vast majority think that the media is fabricating stories about them. 76% of Republican voters say yes, there are fabrications in the media on Trump. 11% say no.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. Now you're gonna say, okay, yeah, of course Republicans believe that more, but no, let's pause to note that 3/4 of Republicans in this country have lost their minds. So if you say the corporate media is biased, I'm gonna agree with you guys. I'm not trying to defend their bias, and you know I've said this a million times. I think they have an establishment bias. The status quo is great. They work for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But I also have worked there. I know a lot of those folks. I know how the system works. They don't just sit in a room and go, what can we make up about anyone, whether it's Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders, who I really like. No, they're slanted. They think Bernie Sanders shouldn't be president. They will take something he said and twist his words a little bit, right? So I understand that. I feel your pain if you think they're biased, whether we're on the same side or not. But they don't go in a room and go, let's just make up a story about Bernie Sanders out of whole cloth. Let's just imagine it. And don't worry, our editors won't fire us for fabricating a story. They don't do it about Trump. And 3/4 of Republicans in this country believe something that isn't remotely true. We've lost them. We've lost them. They don't live in this reality. They live in an alternate reality.
So the numbers are different when it comes to Democrats. Only 20% of Democrats believe that the media is fabricating stories about Trump and the administration. 65% say no.
Sorry, real quick, pause there too. 20% of Democrats think the media is inventing stories, fabricating stories about Trump. Oh my God, the media has lost all credibility.
No, it's about to get a lot worse. And also, it's something that I think everyone, regardless of your ideology, should be concerned about because this is like the roadmap to a tyrannical government. And the reason why I say that is because the media is so important in holding elected officials accountable, whether they're on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. Journalism is important, right? And if you have an American electorate that is distrustful of the media and doesn't see the value of journalism, you are essentially paving the way for someone like Trump to do some pretty terrible things. So look, very quickly, when it comes to independents, 44% believe the media is making up stories about Trump, 31% say no.
We've lost independents.
Yeah.
Independents are actually now real. Before they were just, they were to some degree Republican leaning for a long time. Independents are now true independents and they do decide elections. I've seen that happen right in front of my eyes over the course of the last decade or so. and partly because people are no longer attached to party labels like they were in earlier times. And if you've lost independence, that's really bad news. And for the majority of independents, or at least the plurality of independents, to say, yes, the news media is liars who just make up stories about Trump, oh, that's really bad news. And we didn't invent that.
So just to give you more bad news, and what I would argue is the scariest part about all of this, there are Americans who believe that the government, Trump specifically, should have the ability to take licenses away from news organizations. Now, if you could recall, recently Trump criticized NBC News and said that NBC News should have its license revoked. And apparently there are Americans who think that the president should have the power to do that. Let's go to graphic 18. Now, it's a small portion of the country overall, but it still concerns me. 28% think the government should have the power to revoke broadcast licenses of major news organizations that it says are fabricating news stories about a president or the administration, while 51% think the government should not be able to do that. Another 21% are undecided. So here are specific numbers that are tied to parties. More than 2/3 of Democrats, 68%, think the federal government should not have the power to revoke broadcast licenses of those organizations. Only 68%. Like, what's going on? There are Democrats that think that it's okay for the government to revoke licenses from news organizations that it doesn't like. You're gonna allow them to be the arbiter of what is and is not fabricated news and have the power to revoke their licenses? What is wrong with you? That is fucking insane. That is so incredibly devastating. Like, Democrats? Okay, well, we've completely lost it. So let's go on to Republicans. 46% of Republicans think the government should have the power, and a third of GOP voters who don't think so. So a third of GOP voters say no, shouldn't have the power to do that. But 46% of Republicans believe, yeah, definitely. The government should have the power to revoke licenses from news organizations that it doesn't like.
Okay, so if you're in that camp who believes that, you're un-American. You are. It's one of the most central parts of our government that the First Amendment guarantees the freedom of the press. If you don't agree, first of all, if you don't think that we should apply the First Amendment, I assume that you will immediately agree that we also should not apply the Second Amendment. Oh wait, you like to pick and choose among amendments? I thought you were constitutionalists, right-wingers. No. You don't love the Constitution, you don't love this country, you don't love our system.
You guys are throwing feces at one another over Ben Shapiro giving a speech at Berkeley, right? Because, oh my God, this is a violation of our constitutional amendments if they don't allow him to speak. Which, by the way, again, for the billionth time, I agree with that. He should be allowed to speak, Ann Coulter should be allowed to speak. Whatever deplorable individual you want on that campus should be allowed to speak. But at the same time, you're gonna turn around and say that the government should be able to revoke licenses for media organizations that it doesn't like?
So,
wow.
So that's deeply disturbing for what Americans think, how Donald Trump has driven that narrative, and unfortunately it's worked. He recently did a tweet, I mean, he said fake news a million times, and he accused CNN and all the rest of being, quote, fiction writers. He just tweeted that the other day. But there is one other factor here, and one other party that's responsible, and that is the mainstream media. And so, now, there are a lot of things that I disagree with the mainstream media on. I've done stories about 1,000 Morning Joe mistakes, and the way that they frame it, they're preposterous. They talk about what the American people think, and they don't back it up with polling. I did one on Chuck Todd, etc. Do I think that NBC's license should be taken away? Are you insane? No, I also can speak, and I could show you their clip, and then I could show you our clip, that I could show you data to prove us right. That is called more speech. And by the way, you're allowed to do the same exact thing. You're allowed to do it on YouTube, Facebook, anywhere you like, and you could even make stuff up, and you often do on the right wing, over and over and over again. And then turn around and go, can you believe people are making stuff up? Okay, are you kidding me? Look at the right-wing blogs. Half of it on that, half of the stuff on there is made up. And we're not talking about ending their freedom of speech, even though they consistently actually lie.
By the way, you know that journalists can get sued at any time for defamation. Like, we have laws that prevent people from flat out lying about people, whether it's an elected official or a private citizen. If you are found guilty of defamation laws, you're gonna face some serious consequences for that. No one is allowed to just fabricate stories about anyone. Okay, there are already laws preventing that from happening. Do journalists sometimes get facts wrong? Absolutely, they're humans, and should they get criticized for that? Yes. But to say that they're making up stories about the president is absolutely ludicrous. And quite honestly, it makes me feel like we're just wasting our time, right? Like, what are we doing? We're wasting our time. They don't want to believe it because it goes against what they already believe, their preconceived notions.
No, we have to win the independence. And that is why I'm so mad at the establishment media, because they refuse to acknowledge their bias and thereby hurt the rest of the media, because they keep saying, oh, we're neutral, we're objective, we have no bias at all. And for some of them, that's absolutely true. And a lot of the print guys are terrific. Reuters, McClatchy, The Guardian, The Intercept, I can go on and on and on, right? But for cable news guys and for a lot of the broadcast news guys, they favor the status quo. They do, but they don't recognize it. They think that everything is wonderful, we shouldn't have too much change. Everyone on the left is a radical, everyone on the right is a radical, and they say it and they pound that message home all the day. Now, I don't care in that I'm not gonna shut them down for it, I disagree with them, that's okay. But when they say that they have a monopoly on the truth, and the truth is that the status quo is great, what the rest of the country hears is, screw you, you're not on my side. And when I say that to the establishment media, they get really angry. But knuckleheads, we're unlike these guys, we're not trying to tear you down. We're trying to make it better so that people actually trust you again. But if you keep telling everybody that anyone who wants change is a radical, and people like Hillary Clinton and by the way, Mike Pence and establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats are awesome and they're honorable gentlemen, and that we should go back to the middle and keep doing what their donors say. When you do ridiculous things like pretend that money in politics doesn't matter. No, these are honorable gentlemen having a debate in Congress. They're not having a debate. They took a check and then they did what their donors told them to do. When you pretend things like that, you lose all credibility. And what you're doing, unfortunately, is helping the other side attack the core principles of America and helping them destroy the freedom of the press. You're not helping, you're hurting. We're trying to fix it, but I don't know that we're ever gonna get through to the establishment press or to the right wing, or now even some Democrats who think, no, they just get in a room, have like fantasy time, make up random stories and then print them or put them on TV.
Man, this is incredibly embarrassing and depressing.
And by the way, and no matter what you guys are saying, and honestly what we're saying, Trump is at 44%. Now, for most presidents, that's a really bad number. But for him, he's climbing. He was in the mid-30s. He's going up to 44%. Man, they are just, folks in America are not listening to the media. The media has been overwhelmingly negative to Trump. And people are going, I don't care, I like him anyway.
All right, well, enjoy what he's about to do to your life. And what he's been doing to your life, to be quite honest. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Unfortunately, we'll be proven right again about Trump, but it won't be pretty in the meanwhile. Help us build independent media together. TYTnetwork.com/join.